by the time you finish that book and you come to the acceptance of Orthodox Islam is the right path to take, the next step, Allah blessed me with the opportunity to read a Quran. I was halfway through it. I called the local masjid, and the imam invited me over and said, if this is what you believe, this is what you have to do. We made my shahada, and we've been learning.
Hello, Islamic friends. Meet again with the Islamic Voice channel. Before we continue, it would be good for us to support this channel by clicking the subscribe, like, comment, and share buttons. Find the only answer in the Quran. This doctor immediately converts to Islam. Find the only answer in the Quran, then this doctor immediately converted to Islam or became a convert. Yes, this is Dr. Daniel Abdurrahman McBride, a chiropractor in Central Florida, United States. He found the only answer in the Quran. From the upload on the Dean Show TV YouTube channel, Dr. Daniel shares the story of how he first got to know Islam and finally converted to Islam. While attending chiropractic school in Atlanta, Daniel was having a discussion with a close friend. He wanted to understand how to pray to God properly. Daniel has the Quran because someone lent it to him and then gave it to Daniel. Daniel explained that after reading the Quran, even though it was only half, not all of it had been read, the Quran made a lot of sense, and the English translation still made sense. All the stories about the Prophet that Daniel used to learn are all in the Al-Quran. Al-Quran can provide a clearer version of all the stories of the Prophet and more complete. This is a beautiful additional knowledge from the knowledge that Daniel has. For Dr. Daniel to become a Muslim makes his life feel more beautiful and clear. Why? Because in the Quran there are rules of life, namely what is allowed to be done and what is not allowed to be done. There are commands and prohibitions of Allah. This is very clear according to Daniel and very amazing. In fact, life can be lived more easily because the Quran informs humans about the rules. Now, I understand better what can be done and what can't be done, he said Daniel. Daniel explains that if he didn't know the rules, then how unfair would life be? Maybe all there is stress. Even though the Quran is translated into English, it can be clearly understood about what is right and what is wrong, what has reward value and what has punishment. According to Daniel, the most special thing about the Quran is that scientific matters that are being discussed by scientists in the current era have actually been discussed in the Quran thousands of years ago. Daniel explained that the Quran is very clear, just read it and understand all the verses. In chiropractic practice, Daniel found in the 96th chapter of the Quran, Al-Alaq, verses 15 to 16, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about how Allah attracts human life to be taken through the crown of the head. Daniel said, with my functional neurology, science now agrees with Islam. Humans make the final decision to do bad or good deeds at the crown of the head, in the frontal lobe of the brain, he said again. Daniel explains that several hundred years ago, humans still thought that women had no brains. Meanwhile, in the Quran, 1500 years ago, Allah said that you will be punished if you sin. So there the final decision, whether you do good or bad, is in the crown of your head. That is why Islam and science are very much in line for Daniel. American chiropractor, the Quran makes my life easier. Dr. Daniel Abdurrahman McBride, a chiropractor in Central Florida, USA, stated that the Quran has made his life feel easier and clearer. It's amazing. Like I said, I've only read half of the Quran, but honestly, life is easier because the Quran tells me the rules. And now I know exactly what to do and what not to do, he said in an interview on the Dean Show TV YouTube channel titled, Quran Knew This Before Science, 18 April 2022. He said, if humans are not given rules in life, then it is very unfair, because what will emerge is the phenomenon of life stress. He likened it to traffic regulations without any notification about the permissible speed of driving. But suddenly the driver was arrested by the police and found guilty of driving past the maximum limit, even though there was no rule previously conveyed about changing the speed. Such conditions are truly unfair according to him, while the Quran provides clarity about all matters that are halal and haram. If the Quran, even though it is translated into English, is very clear, which is right and which is wrong, which is worth reward and which is punishment, he explained. In addition, the Quran for Dr. Daniel greatly helped him become a father and husband in educating his family, because all actions are standardized to the Quran and become simpler. Islam has made his life easier than he imagined. It makes it easier for me to be a father, because imagine if I am wrong and my child brings the Quran to me and says, "Dad should do it like this." That means my child is right and I am wrong. It is very simple. For example, my wife and I. If we argue and she says that is not the teaching of Islam, my wife is right. Islam makes my life easier than I could have imagined, said Dr. Daniel Abdurrahman McBride. And the most special of the Quran, according to Dr. Daniel, is a matter of science that is discussed by scientists today. It turns out that it was first discussed in the Quran thousands of years ago. As I said, the Quran is very clear. You just read all the verses. Even in my chiropractic practice, there are verses 15 to 16 if you read chapter 96. Allah says about how He will take our souls. The soul will be taken through the English translation right through the crown, through the forehead that is torn, he explained. He explained that for believers, the impact of this event would only be a little sweating. With my functional neurology, where do you think science agrees with religion? And vice versa, if that's true? Where do you think humans make the final decision to do good and bad deeds? It's in the crown, in the frontal lobe. That's the brain. There's no way anyone could have known that 1,400 years ago, he said. He mentioned that just a few hundred years ago, people still thought that women had no brains. Even Christians thought that women had no souls forever. Meanwhile, the Quran, since 1,400 years ago, has explained about the fontanelle that every human being, both male and female, has. And that is where humans make their final decisions before acting. The Quran says this is where you will be punished if you sin. That is where the final decision is whether you do good or bad. It is at the crown of the head. That is why Islam and science are very clear to me, he explained. He also shared the story of how he first got to know Islam. He said, when he was discussing with his school friends in Atlanta about how to pray properly, then one of his friends gave him the Quran until he studied it. Dr. Daniel read the Quran until he found the stories of the prophets so complete and clear that he had not previously known the truth. And for him, all the contents of the Quran were very clear beyond the knowledge he had. The Quran gave me a clearer version of all the stories and even more complete. It was a beautiful additional knowledge from the knowledge I had, he concluded.